Welcome back to another episode. He's back for a third week, Mr. George Tremis of the Chosen Life podcast, Jonathan A. Cohen, author, Bible 3.0, audiobook, ebook, physical book. People ask me, oh, I heard about your presentations. Where can I get the book? Just type in the Bible 3.0, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, wherever you get your books, and it is audiobook as well. And Georgie, today, man, we talked so much in the last few weeks about motivation and
Yep.
lifestyle and mindset and spirituality and everything else in between. We're gonna get to our bread and butter today. This is what pays the bills for you and I, and it's gonna be all about real estate. Do you like talking about real estate?
Sure. Let's do it. I like talking about anything with you.
So I gotta ask you because it's actually a question that's never really come up, and I'm just curious because I know how my upbringing was like. So you and I are both in the real estate world, right? Realtor, real estate lawyer. Gotta ask you, when was your first exposure to real estate in your life that you can recall? How far back is
In what sense? Like
it? In your life?
purchasing or
No. George Tremis comes out of the womb. He's crying. They cut the umbilical cord, right? And then he starts going through kindergarten, nursery, grade one, all the way to high school. And here we are today, right? There's a lot of stuff in between. Where do you recall your first memory of thinking about real estate, hearing about real estate? When did you get exposed to the world of real estate?
you know what's really cool is I never realized it until you asked that question. No joke, I'm serious. Because I'm thinking, well, okay, I got licensed 10 years ago. I bought investment properties before that. I flipped some houses. And I'm thinking, is that what he means? Or does he mean like first time I lived in a house? And I'm like, can't mean that. But and then I thought about, I was born, we were in an apartment, then we moved into a house next door to my grandparents, and then I thought about my grandparents. I'm like, that was my first exposure. I was a kid, and I remember because down the block in Montreal, we lived on L'acadie. My grandfather had another house, a rental house. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, particularly my grandfather. My dad worked a lot. My parents had me young. And so I'd go visit. And I can't even think of how many times now I'd walk the block with him. He'd be talking to me about his property. I'd meet his tenants with him. He would check on stuff, maybe fix something, and I'd be there helping him. So he's a very hands-on landlord, right? So that was my first experience. And I didn't remember that until now.
I guess
Wow. This show really does give you insights.
because I know I reflect within myself, and when I ask you a question, I'll know the answer right away if you ask me back. Because I think about it's all about, look, when we're watching, we're talking about interviews and hearing other people's experiences. My idea is I hear you talking. I know I'm thinking about reflecting within myself your experiences and how they relate to my experiences. I guarantee you everybody watching right now is thinking about theirs as well. And as a real estate lawyer, one of the first people tell me always, you're a real estate lawyer. When did you first know you were interested in real estate? How'd you know you'd become a real estate lawyer? Da, da, da. And like, I've been talking real estate like since I was born. Like I grew up in a real estate family. It's all they cared about was sit at the dinner table,
Yeah.
just talk real estate. I had a nice older brother, that would take me everywhere. I was a young kid. He was a little older than me, and he would take me to the properties and with the tenants, everything else. The funniest part was,
Similar.
imagine, man, like being grade 6, grade 7. What do you recall like doing after school when you were in grade 6, grade 7?
Homework.
Okay. And besides homework,
Visiting my grandparents, maybe going over to the property with my grandfather.
riding a bike.
Yeah, that too. Definitely.
You didn't have to sit at a typewriter and write letters to tenants in grade 6, grade 7?
No.
I did.
See, you're already being trained to be a lawyer.
And I was like, it's really nice outside. Can I go ride my bike? When you finish the letter, then you can go ride your bike. And it's one of those things like my mom, like when I was in kindergarten, she bought me this thing called Mr. Wizard. It was like, it looked like a Game Boy from back in the day, but all it did, Mr. Wizard, was like this yellow console. And all you did was sit and do math problems on this thing. It was like the screen was this big. You had the keys, like it was like a rectangle shape.
Yeah.
The actual screen was this size LED, and all you're doing is just doing math problems. And that's what I got to play with. But you know what? I came to grade 1 and I already had a grade level 3 math, so I gotta say, I didn't like it at the time. And I'm like, don't want to write these letters. I don't want to play with Mr. Wizard. But you know what? It put me ahead of the curve. So thanks, family.
Yep. Seriously, though.
Yep.
I mean, I can't say I had quite the same upbringing, but there was a lot of. I'll give you a great example.
Please.
It's from teenage years. So, my family is in automotive, right?
They used to be
And
teachers, and
yeah,
then they went into business, right?
and they kind of did them almost both at the same time too, because that's the way my father is and
Yep.
my family's work ethic. And I remember thinking, well, I got a dad who's, the mechanic to the mechanics, he just solves problems that other mechanics don't even begin to know how to fix.
Wow.
And it's true, not just the son's pride.
Damn true.
And I thought, oh, okay. So I had a Mustang, an 88 GT Mustang, was it? Yeah, I think so. And I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, I want to lower the car, suspension work, etc. And he's like, okay, that's what you want to do, eh? Okay, we'll do that. I'm like, yeah. And I'm thinking I'm gonna have the best car.
How old were you?
It's 17, I think, roughly, right?
Yeah, sounds like when I had a 17-year-old. Yeah.
And so then he goes to me after you read this and drops a Ford suspension dynamics manual on the table. Says, read that, learn it, talk to me when you understand, then maybe we'll do it. So kind of similar, right? But you know what? The things that they helped us do at these early years, they compound over time. Time is one of the most powerful things in the world, right? So anything you do now, it ripples and it compounds over time. So what they did for us was actually very beneficial. It made us who we are today.
Well, this is where, some people get advantages in life, and it matters who's around you, who influences you, what circumstances you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring this up is because we're back to real estate, obviously, today's episode. And I think about, as a real estate lawyer, you probably think about this as a realtor a lot. There's a common misconceptions because people say, I'm 30, I'm 32, I'm looking to buy my first property. And they're like, oh, did they have much savings? What kind of job they have? Did they have debt? What's their family circumstances? But it's not always that there's no bank of mom and dad and there's no education. So there are some people very well to do and they just don't take the plunge. They say, you know what? I've been renting. I had a good rental amount on my place. It was locked in, so I didn't want to leave. I'm really scared to own. I feel like there's a lot of pressure. I'm going to have to repair the place. I have to deal with issues. When I'm a tenant, I can just come and go as I please. And it's amazing, different walks of people, depending on what experiences they have with real estate. And ultimately, I find whether you have the money, don't have the money, the education, whatever being as far as getting you ahead in life, when it comes to real estate, if you weren't given the 411 about it, it's very hard to just say, this is scary. I don't know it, so I'm not going to do it. Sound about right?
Well, definitely. I think just humans, period, we shy away from what we fear. I was talking about that in training that I delivered on Tuesday. But I think that they need to embrace learning. And the problem is, I don't think all sources of information or all people who are subject matter experts or advisors or brokers give information in a way that's unbiased. So, for example, if somebody tells me to buy their primary residence, their only residence is a great investment, I say, not bad. Depends on the returns in the market, but you better not be buying it just because you think it's an investment. You're buying it because you want a home, because you don't want a landlord to say that you're going to be, out because they're going to sell the home or they need to move in themselves or something. So you're getting that security. So you pay a premium for security, just like insurance. You have to pay a premium. The true investing in real estate is when it's a second, third property, whatever have you, right? And that's a different situation. I'm not saying it's not good to have a home of your own, but make sure that you understand what comes with it, the good and the bad, and why you're doing it. I think too many people do things without asking why, and they do it because that's what other people are doing, and that's the power of social proof. So the people that rent, if they're being diligent with the money they're potentially saving, right?
Yeah.
And they put it into some other productive endeavor, cool, no problem. But unfortunately, they rent, spend, don't accumulate asset bases, and then they have no asset at the end.
It's exactly what I was going to say. We got person A and person B. Person A rents for 30 years, likes to eat out a lot, likes to live a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Person B, 30 years, owns a home, also likes to live, eat out, everything else. At the end of 30 years, the renter hands back the keys, has nothing to show. The person who owns the property has now a mortgage-free property and has all that sitting there. Big difference in my estimation.
Yeah, owning a home is like a forced savings plan. That's the way I look at it. I think where people make the mistake is when they buy way more home than they need, and they don't even realize that they're not doing it from a financial standpoint, yet they try to justify it financially and say, well, I own my home. You do, but for example, I own a lot less home personally for myself, my own use than I could have, but I put the extra to work somewhere else.
Yeah, it's funny, there's so many different schools of thought on it. And there is no right or wrong answer, I'll tell people. Like you can have somebody who has a very minimal home and it's a 3-level one. They live in the basement, they rent out the other 2 levels. That could very much work. You could have a person that has a very, very nice home and then doesn't buy other properties, but that nice home is a good value, increases in value. You could have somebody who has a minimal home because they then are able to take the money and buy other properties. Instead of having one nice home, they have 3 so-so properties, but they own 3 properties. There's so many ways to slice and dice it. But at the end of the day, George, I've noticed a common trend with my clients, and it's this. The people that start off very young, invest in real estate, by the time they're 30, 40, 50, and own multiple properties, this is what you call wealthy.
Yeah. So real estate's made more millionaires, multimillionaires, decamillionaires, centimillionaires than anything. I mean, the .com stuff is sexy, what we talk about, young millionaires like Zuckerberg. But for every one of him, there's 1,000 people that aren't as wealthy, but they're rich and wealthy off.
Yeah. So for those people out there watching today and they're saying, you know what, I've been thinking about buying a property, I'm still renting, but not just those people. It's people that do own a property and saying, you know what, I can't be a landlord. That's not for me. I never want to do this. I challenge them sometimes to think about it because, again, it's about that. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I know a lot of landlords that they started off in their 20s and 30s, not handy whatsoever, don't really have the business skills, hired the right people, had the right lawyer, the right accountant, the right manager, and they learned, they grew into the position. Like a doctor that's a surgeon, they don't go and just start operating on people out of medical school. They get taught, they practice, they learn. If that's a skill you want to learn, like everything else, learn. People have side hustles. There's a term. I like to have a side hustle. I sell stuff on Amazon. I had an eBay store. This is no different. Real estate is a side hustle in that sense. But the one that really stuck to me, George, at the end of the day, was somebody told me, and I've heard this many times, but I remember the first time somebody ever told me this. They said, you work 9 to 5. You are never going to be a millionaire 9 to 5. 100%. Your job 9 to 5 is to create seed money. And what you're going to use that seed money for, that's going to decide your future. So are you going to plant it in finances? Are you going to buy stocks, bonds? Are you going to buy real estate? What are you going to do with the seed money? If the seeds are going and getting wasted and thrown out the door, they're never going to grow.
Yeah.
So I challenge people, think about that seed money you develop and what you're actually planting.
It's 100% true. So this is the kind of financial advice that people aren't taught, but it's so powerful. And I mean, I live my life that way. That's the way I look at it, right? Earned income is meant to buy assets. Assets will pay for liabilities. I even have a video on that on my social media with my Cadillac. It's like, I don't make the payments. My assets make the payment. Borrow for assets. Don't borrow for liabilities, right? That's my rule. And if you can't afford to pay it off and it's not an asset, don't buy it. So ever since I was a kid, my dad said, if you cannot afford to pay off your credit card at the end of the month, you shouldn't be. A dollar made will never be. And I was like, interesting. And it stuck with me, even though I didn't really like to listen to him at the time.
I remember going to the States and I'm going shopping with this guy, friend of a friend. And anyways, we're in this mall and he sees something he likes, his watch or ring or something. And he says, yeah, I'm going to go speak to the salesperson and I'm going to go do the layaway. And I'm like, layaway? What's layaway? I've never heard of layaway. They don't have layaway in Canada? Really? What's that? I really had no clue what he's talking about. So he's like, you put some money, you give it to them, and they keep the item. And then you come back every so often. You have to have a certain amount of time to do this. And you keep giving them money. And once you paid it off, they give it to you. I'm like, isn't that a pawn shop?
Yeah. And they get the money in the meantime.
And if you can't end up paying it, I don't think they give you the money back.
Forfeit.
You know what? Sometimes we don't need the stuff. Sometimes we don't have to have the stuff. And those people that don't go to Starbucks every single day, they make their own lunches and stuff like that. They don't have to have a new outfit every single week. When you put away 50,000, 70,000, guess what? You can use it to actually do something tangible to get yourself ahead. It's a scary thing. I've had clients that rented their whole lives and 60 years old, they buy their first property and they barely had a down payment because they lived the lifestyle. But then they're like, wow, I have nothing to show for that. I have nothing to leave my children.
Compounding didn't work for them.
and I have to work for the rest of my life till I die. I can never retire because they never put it away. They never figured it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, in real estate too, the other thing is you can leverage it, right? So you talk about 50, 60 grand. I mean, it takes a little bit more, let's say, but you have a down payment.
Well, to get started, to at least have something to begin with. Yeah.
And then you can leverage the balance, right? So that's a nice thing too. Unlike, let's say, and I know there's margin accounts, different things, but the point is, unlike buying a security like a stock, unless you're playing margin accounts, and you shouldn't be if you don't know what you're doing.
No.
Right? You have to pay for it in full. Yes. Real estate isn't like that, and it doesn't have the same volatility. So that's why it's an opportunity for so many people to become millionaires. But I think that they need to approach it like a journey and understand the end game. So even when I'm working with clients, I say to them, I go, close your eyes. Do you see yourself in this house in 5 years? What does it look like? 10 years, what does it look like? And the reason why I bring this up is there's a young couple, first-time buyers. They had an amazing renting situation, but they decided they wanted to invest in their own home for financial and for life reasons, right? They have a cute little 6-year-old baby, Charlotte. And so we looked at some houses, and it caught them a little bit with the flash and the bling and the finishes. And I said, where do you plan on being in 3 years, 5 years? And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you have cute little Charlotte. You're going to make more little cuties, aren't you? Right? It was a 2-bedroom. And I'm like, so is Charlotte going to live in the same room as her brother? You know, as much as, you know, I want you to call me in 3-5 years,
right?
I don't want it to be because I didn't do my job. And I go, so let's look at your purchase as a journey, not a transaction. And that changed everything. So the point you were talking about earlier, people are scared. Reach out to a professional. I don't clean my own teeth. I brush them, but I don't do the cleaning, pulling my teeth, anything.
You don't do your own root canals.
Yeah. So you need to go to the professional until you become proficient in it. That's why it's called professional. Yeah. Until I'm proficient, I have a professional.
I love it. I love it. So somebody gives you a call, George, and says, I'm looking to buy investment property. I'm looking to buy my first home. I got referred to you. Where does the journey begin?
First, we need to understand where they're at to decide where they're going, right? And then we need to find the destination. So again, what's their journey look like? Oh, you're first-time buyers. You have a little 6-month-old, so you don't want to live where you are anymore. You want a backyard for your child. So that's where we start to do the needs assessment. So like we've talked about on the show, everything is driven based on the heart first.
And in your estimation, when does the lawyer get involved with the transaction? Is it right at the beginning, in the middle, right at the end? When is a good time for a lawyer to get involved in a real estate transaction? In your estimation, I'll tell you what my answer is after.
Well, you know how I work with you and how my agents that I guide to work with you and your firm is, as soon as I know I have a deal, even if it's conditional, I have a pretty good idea it's going to go through, right? Even though we're going to do the inspection and the rest of it. I've already confirmed finance. So I know that's not going to be an issue, even though we have the condition. I send it to you, and then, you know, your firm opens the file, and then as soon as it goes firm, I notify you. I send the NOF or, you know, waiver of notice of fulfillment, whatever it may be. Yeah. And then you're prepared. You know ahead of time. I let you know the closing date, everything you need to know.
You are very organized that way. I agree.
If it's commercial, I involve you sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I even have sometimes first-time buyers that they've never bought property ever anywhere in the world. And this is their first transaction. And they're starting to get very, very concerned. Right from the beginning, they started looking at a few properties. They have a million questions. What name am I going to take this under? How am I going to hold title to it? Am I going to be able to build on this property? Can I tear it down? How's that going to work? What stage do I organize the mortgage? And
sorry, these are all questions they're giving you?
No, this is a question that they start with the realtor.
Oh, okay.
And and the realtor, if they have the understanding, say, hey, you know what? I know Jonathan. Let's give him a call. He'll start answering your questions now, and you have more certainty going to it before you even go to put that offer in. Mm-hmm. So it's so many different stages. The worst stage I would say to bring in a lawyer is you have a deal signed, it's firm, and it's now a week or two before closing. You're like, oh yeah, I need to hire a lawyer. That's where I say it doesn't work.
That's the lack of foresight.
Right. Let's try to do it at the beginning as possible. Yeah. And but realistically, in most cases, they know the lawyer's available for the conversation, but the offer comes in, it's conditional, firm, boom, they decide when they're going to pick us in. But it's nice to know that they can come to the professional at any point. No different than, you know, you have mortgage questions, get to the mortgage person early in the process, but don't leave it till the last minute. Insurance, same thing. So get your professionals in order and know who to contact when the questions come up.
Absolutely. Like I tell my clients a couple things. I use a few analogies, right? One, I'm like a quarterback of a team. So, do you have team players that I'm going to work with? Do you already have a dedicated mortgage broker, let's say? No? Great. I'm going to introduce you to my primary, my secondary. You can decide who you prefer to work with. My lawyer, primary, secondary, very rare secondary, don't worry. And then they decide who they want to work with, right? And if there are questions that are appropriate at that point in time, then they reach out because I'm the quarterback. I'm calling the plays. I'm running down the field. I'm trying to score us a touchdown. It's on me. It's my job to make sure that you're lined up right. You know, the mortgage people are lined up right and everything. And the other thing I say, which I know is going to be stolen, but that's fine, is I say, you know what I am to you? I make sure you have no headaches when you work with me.
People don't like headaches.
And to do that, I have to make sure I'm a quarterback, running all the plays, seeing where it's going to go. I play chess. I don't play checkers. And that's why I don't involve you at the 11th hour.
There we go. There we go. And generally, smooth closings, people are happy, and that's what's the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, Georgie, when people want to reach out to you for the real estate questions, needs, how do they get in touch with you?
My last name is the easiest way to find me. George Tremis, T as in Tango, R-E, M as in money, I-S. Google me. Everybody loves to Google. You'll find me on socials. You'll find my website. You'll find it all.
The time goes too quickly when you're here, man, and we go over so many different weeks, but it's been great getting the information. You really help steer people now to understand from a real estate point of view what to do. They're thinking about buying their first property, investment property. Bottom line is you got to contact the realtor, the lawyer, get in touch with us. We're here to help you. And we'll be back next week. It's already done. Time's done, but we'll be back next week already. Don't know who's going to be here. Don't know what the topic's going to be, but it's going to be fun because it is all about living or wanting to live the chosen life.